All right, mate. Joolz Guides here, in which I wander around London and tell you fascinating facts. And please remember to like, share and subscribe to this channel if you like the videos. Tell you what, here's fun. I brought with me a Tudor map of London so we can kind of compare Tudor London as well. We're just here outside St Paul's Cathedral and I wanted to come and show you, well, I've been meaning to talk about this fella for a while. Look here, next to Cafe Nero is something called, they call him the panyer boy. A panyer is a kind of package that you throw over a horse or a bicycle or something like that. And it's supposed to represent the highest point in London. You know, when the Romans came and built Londinium, founded Londinium, they built it on two hills, Ludgate Hill, which we're on at the moment, and Cornhill over there. And so this one says, when you have sought the city round, yet still this is the high ground. August the 27th, 1688. Except it should be down in Cornhill because it's like a foot higher or something. Now some people say that he's Bacchus, the god of wine, and this was like a pub sign for the Panyer pub. But other people say that he represents the market in Bread Street. I wonder why they've put, look, sort. I reckon it's just like a typo. But when you're typing like using a chisel, if you make a mistake, you just have to add a bit in. I don't know. Possibly. Probably something else.
Who is this boy? Lonely and cold, with a heart that's made out of stone.
According to this map, what's it called? Christchurch Newgate? This was actually built on the ruins of Greyfriars Monastery. Look, can you see here on this map? Look, Greyfriars Franciscan Monastery occupied all this area around here until King Henry VIII came along. So he knocked them all down and then they built this church. This is a Christopher Wren, but then of course it was bombed by the Germans. They never fixed it after that, they just left it as this rather nice garden for you to sit in and contemplate pineapples. Because I think Christopher Wren was pretty obsessed with pineapples. Can you see up here, look, they've got pineapples all over the place. Because they were actually really expensive to have pineapples back in those days. And if you were to give someone a pineapple in your house, it showed that you were very welcoming and generous. And so when people have pineapples everywhere, it shows great hospitality and a welcoming, generous spirit. In fact, people could even rent a pineapple if you're having a party or something. So you rent a pineapple, better make sure none of your drunk mates eat it though, because that's going to cost you. You're going to have to give it back later. On QI, they said that when sailors returned from long voyages at sea, the women, the ladies would put a pineapple into the window in order to discourage gentlemen callers to say, you know, this is a virtuous household, my husband is home, do not come and calling. I forgot to mention, it's actually now a house. There's someone lives in here. Yeah. So we were busy filming that pineapple and so realised there was this lady, so typing. Whoops. Sorry.
Do you like pineapple on ham pizzas?
Madonna. Simon. On a pizza. It's so funny, Italians, they will not have it. They will not have it. Christopher Wren probably would have though, because he was obsessed with them. He wanted to put one on the top of St Paul's, but in the end he just put them on the turrets. Well, we've just walked into King Edward Street here. Postal service existed in England back in the 16th century in some shape or form. They had stagecoaches, but then it was regulated by this fella, Rowland Hill, who introduced postage stamps and stuff like that. You know, the penny black being the first, but in 1829 the whole central post office was moved here. So that's why all these buildings around here have something to do with the post office. Well, not anymore. This one I believe was the sorting office, I think, and that one over there was the headquarters. Do you remember we went to the post office museum? It's really great. Underneath they've got this mini train that you can get on. One of the most important stops along that was here because this was the central sorting office, headquarters and all sorts. But that one over there used to be the central telegraph office. And that's where Marconi sent the first public wireless signals in 1896.
All that I know is that you are still there, but I walk these old streets alone.
This is called Postman Park, named after the postman who worked at their headquarters here. You see if the kind of mound over there is a little hill. It's because it is actually a burial ground. Around the edges you can still see the gravestones. When they clear out the graves, they leave the gravestones around the edges. But you might recognise it from the film Closer. Have you seen Closer? Brilliant film. I've spoken about it in another video when I talk all about Watts Memorial. I think I'll cut to that now, we're freezing. So this is Watts Memorial, which is a memorial to heroic self-sacrifice. Londoners who gave their lives in the attempt of saving others. The first one that was set up was Alice Ayres, and I believe that she's the person who Natalie Portman names herself after in the film Closer, who by intrepid conduct saved 3 children from a burning house at the cost of her own young life.
I mean, they're all amazing, some of these doctors who must have known they were at great risk, whereas some of these people who suddenly jumped into rivers didn't really expect to be drowned, but many of them were. It's a lovely tribute to these people, I think.
And it's a very nice little sanctuary, beautiful place to sit down and contemplate life and Julia Roberts. They all seem to be very young, age 26, age 10. That's really cute. Look, John Clinton jumped in to try to save his friend who was even younger than him. It's a pity there aren't more of them, really. Look, it looks like there's space for more.
I think there are plans to have more modern ones.
For some reason it seems to have died out. Maybe people aren't so brave these days.
Perhaps not. No, well, people are a bit more aware.
He drowned whilst saving a stranger and a foreigner. It's almost as if a foreigner isn't a person. It's like he saved a stranger, and not only a stranger, but a foreigner as well. Attempting in her inflammable dress to extinguish the flames which had enveloped her companion. Yeah. Oh, it's rather touching, actually. Yeah, Watt is the guy who erected this monument. G.F. Watts. He was the chap who...
Who?
A fellow by the name of Watt.
What?
Who? So nice, really. I mean, 2007 is the most recent one. They stopped for about 100 years, and then in 2007, I suppose they felt they had to justify, there's some sort of administrative body that takes care of it. Perhaps they needed to justify their existence by actually putting one. What I like is this headstone here in memory of Mrs. Eleanor Loveland. It's really funny because my friend, who used to be a postman, but his middle name is Loveland, and his daughter is called Eleanor. So, hi guys. This is for saying hello to them. But yeah, so this is the Postman Park. If you've seen my video about London Street Furniture Challenge, I'm obsessed with milestones, and there's a milestone up on Haverstock Hill, and it says 4 miles to the post office. So I know that it's exactly 4 miles from here to the Steele's pub. Oh, this, by the way, is the Church of St. Botolph without Aldersgate. I love the names, the churches. St. Botolph was the patron saint of travellers. There's actually 3 churches dedicated to St. Botolph. And they all seem to be just outside the city gates. Do you remember we went to one just outside Bishopsgate near Liverpool Street? But this one's Aldersgate. It's to protect travellers on their way as they leave the city.
When all the young men had wild oats to sow, the sailors had all gone to war.
Look, it's another one of these police posts. These are mostly from the 1930s, but they were introduced in 1907. So the public could use it to phone in a crime or problems, and then if this light was flashing, then any nearby policeman could come and take the call. And they weren't used all that much by the public. Most people preferred just to shout, "Stop thief! Stop thief!" Have you ever shouted "Stop thief"? Sorry.
Stop thief!
This is where the Museum of London is. Very good museum, by the way. I like the Museum of London, and they're soon to be moving it. They're going to move it down to Smithfield Meat Market, which is, yeah, the oldest meat market in London, sadly, is closing. And they're going to put the Museum of London there, but for some reason it's just such a soulless, horrible corner, this little bit. But we're going to head up this street here, Aldersgate Street. We're coming down this street here, and look here, this is Aldersgate. They used to have people's heads, people who had just been hung, drawn and quartered. Samuel Pepys says on the 20th of October, "I saw the limbs of some of our new traitors set upon Aldersgate. A bloody week this and the last have been, there being 10 hanged, drawn and quartered." When King James I came to the throne, on his way down to claim the throne from Scotland, he passed through this very gate. So when they rebuilt it, they have a sculpture of King James I in there. Eventually they demolished it in 1761. There was no need for these gates because King Charles II, he ordered all the portcullises of all the gates to London to be wedged permanently open, and they all fell into disrepair and just got abandoned and gradually demolished. So we're heading round the corner now into Grisham Street, named after Sir Thomas Grisham, who you will know from my video all about the Royal Exchange, where he had a grasshopper.
She put a pineapple in her window to let the boys know there's no more.
The whole area is full of all these livery halls. This one is the Goldsmiths' Hall, who received their royal charter in 1327. There's about 108 livery companies which were created to regulate trade, wages, control of labour conditions. If you were a goldsmith, you had to come here to get your gold officially stamped, hallmarked. And that's why it's called a hallmark, because you brought it to the Goldsmiths' Hall. And next to it, over here, is the Wax Chandler's Hall. They've been there since 1501, dealing with beeswax goods and stuff like that. I suppose that must be why they've got little candles on their coat of arms. Is that? I'm not quite sure why the unicorns are there. We're in Noble Street, which according to this map of Tudor London, this used to be called Faster Lane. And look, St Anne and St Agnes, this is still on, this map is from like 1520, and the church of St Anne and St Agnes is on this map. Yeah, it's that, but you can see we're going down here, we've just come around the London Wall. There's Aldersgate, and there's the church of St Agnes, which is the only church in the city which has 2 dedications. But it used to be called St Anne in the Willows, because there was a little stream that ran along here. Just over here, they've got this remnants of the city wall, because there used to be a Roman fort here as well. I think that little hole down there is where the little stream used to run underneath the wall. The original Roman wall, which was built around, I think, 120 AD, fell into disrepair over the years. But most of the wall that you can see is actually 12th century to about the 17th century. You can look through the window and it gives you an idea of what it used to look like. And it was only really when the bombs dropped in the war that they started to uncover these remnants. And look, some beehives down there. I wonder if they've got anything to do with the Wax Chandler's Hall over there. It's so weird having all this modern stuff right next to these ancient walls. Like, that's one of those Richard Rogers buildings, you know, the guy who did the Pompidou Centre and who asked out my mum. But this used to be a church, the Church of St Olave. You see that street going along there, which is now London Wall. They've called it London Wall, but that was Silver Street. And this is where Shakespeare lived. Now, we went to his other house. When he first moved on, I believe he lived down there near Bishopsgate, but he also lived here when he wrote plays like Othello and King Lear in the house of a wig maker called Christopher Mountjoy.
Snooker player.
I don't believe he played snooker. Doug Mountjoy, that is. You're thinking Doug Mountjoy with the rings. He was like, he had big rings, didn't he? Just Doug Mountjoy. I loved it. I was a big fan of his. Like a bit of King Lear, Simon? Suspend thy purpose if thou didst intend to make this creature fruitful. Let it stamp wrinkles in her brow of youth, with cadent tears fret channels in her cheeks, that she may feel how sharper than a serpent's tooth it is to have a thankless child. Away, away. I'm wasted here. Well, the fort was, I see, this is just after, they must have got rid of the fort by then. But the fort was sort of just around here. And these bastions here, that's 1, 2, 3. So this is the first one here, I think. And then 2 and 3. If you go into the car park over there, you can actually see some more sections of the wall. I always feel like I'm in Cagney and Lacey or something. great places for car chases.
Downtown Manhattan.
They're always car chasing.
People
shot, aren't they, in Colombo and stuff.
Yeah, there's always some dodgy deal happening in the car park.
Now, in medieval times, actual surgeons considered it beneath them to carry out, to shed blood, I suppose. So they'd leave amputations and grisly stuff to someone else and just sort of be consultants. And so barbers would step in and do things like bloodletting, drilling a hole in your skull, applying a course of leeches. Then they decided to join together with the surgeons and formed a worshipful company of barber-surgeons. And this is where the original barber-surgeon hall used to be, built into the side of the city wall itself. And you can still sort of see the evidence of fireplaces and stuff. Maybe that was a little fireplace, perhaps. And these bits for, I don't know, for joists and stuff, weren't they? Maybe. In 1540, when they merged, the barbers said that they wouldn't perform any surgery, and the surgeon said that they wouldn't cut any hair. The only medical procedure barbers could still do was extract teeth. That actually explains why it is that you get the blood and bandages outside a barber's shop.
It's blood, isn't it?
Yeah, it's supposed to be the red and white stripes.
Blood, yeah. Wow, look at that!
It makes a good sound, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So if you go to the hairdresser and you ask for a short back and sides, or short back and front, as I usually ask for, and they offer to drill a hole in your head or put some leeches on you, you can say, sorry mate, you don't have the right to do that. Cite that 1540 Act of Parliament. Look at this. Up here is quite, it's just so futuristic. I feel like I'm in Blade Runner or RoboCop. These are from the 19th century. I mean, just yonder, behind that whole area over there, there used to be, look, the site of the former Jews cemetery, which is over there. Up until 1177, if you were Jewish anywhere in England, you had to be buried over there. So if you died up in, like, I don't know, York or Manchester or something, they'd have to bring you down to here to be buried. Now, St Giles Cripplegate was built in 1394. I mean, it was founded in 1100. It's been renovated, but it did survive the fire of London. And it's amazing to think that Oliver Cromwell got married in there. Yeah, John Milton, who wrote Paradise Lost, he was buried in there. Daniel Defoe was baptised in there, but he wasn't baptised Daniel Defoe. He was baptised Daniel Foe. But then because he wanted to sound cool and aristocratic, he added "de" to his name. Oh, I'm going to call myself Daniel Defoe.
So bury me beneath the Cripplegate pines. Blow out the brief candle, my heart.
So that's where it all started, the first bomb. I don't know what they had against this area, the Nazis. They absolutely levelled the whole area, which is why they ended up having to build all this housing here. So between 1965 and around 1976, they built this, called it the Barbican, to house professionals, businessmen in the city. But then along came the right to buy scheme, and a lot of people bought their own houses. They're worth a fortune now. They call it Barbican because it comes after the Latin for fortified outpost, named after the fort that we saw over there. The architects were called Chamberlain, Powell and Bonn. They designed this, what is brutalist architecture essentially, but it's been voted London's ugliest building. But amazingly, I do quite like it. There's something remarkably beautiful in its ugliness. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Even these things I like that they've kept, Julian. Like these, the door designs.
Yeah.
The signs,
That's quite retro now, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's because it's a Grade 2 listed building. It's listed. They can't, that's why, so no one's allowed to change anything. There's over 2,000 flats here. The sorts of people who used to live here, I mean, Benazir Bhutto had a flat here, Arthur Scargill, George Best, Norman Tebbit.
The guy from the Pogues.
Shane McGowan?
Yeah.
Did he live in them?
Yeah.
Really?
Up here, yeah. Frighteningly high.
Yeah, but you must get a wonderful view of London. Imagine if you owned that one up there, you get a great balcony. Imagine the parties you'd have. It's so cool. They've got cinema, they've got theatre.
Even though it feels really deserted and there's no one here, everybody is here. They're all at home.
yeah.
They're just not outside. Yeah, listen.
They're going to come and pick us off. This is where the Cripplegate used to stand. But there we go, the site of Cripplegate, demolished 1760. It's got nothing to do with the word cripple. It actually means crepel. Crepel is an old Anglo-Saxon word meaning underground passage. The gates were all closed when they rang the curfew. And it was the only way in after hours. If you had been out to go and visit your girlfriend who lived outside the city gates, and you could spin the right yarn to the bloke on the door, if you weren't wearing trainers, he'd let you in. The city wall went all the way from Blackfriars all the way around up to where we were near the post office park. There's that round, the square bit there is the fort that I was talking about, the Roman fort.
Right.
Then you go along here past Cripplegate, and it bends all the way round and finishes near the Tower of London. Those turrets and battlements at the top there, those were added in Tudor times during the War of the Roses, and you can see the quite distinctive crisscross pattern. The level of the street now has raised quite a bit since those times, so this would have gone down quite a way. That would have been quite a formidable wall to scale. And just opposite here is what used to be the St Alphege Chapel. Back in the 14th century, William Elsing, this merchant who actually died in the Black Death of 1349, was a nice fellow who opened this the Elsing Priory around here, which was for homeless blind people. And then King Henry VIII decided to dissolve all the monasteries, and he turfed everybody out, and he turned the whole priory into houses. But then after that, there was a massive fire which destroyed everything except for this chapel here, which was then used as the church for St Alphege. A bit of medieval history right here next to all this madness.
There is a hospital from years gone by for all of those men who can't see.
This is Love Lane, where there used to be a lot of prostitution back in the old days. Right here there used to be a church called St Mary the Virgin, Aldermanbury, which, like many churches burnt down in the fire of London, was redone by Christopher Wren, no doubt with some pineapples on it. And then it was bombed by the Luftwaffe. But in this case, they transported the remains to a place called Fulton, Missouri in America as a kind of shrine to Winston Churchill, because that's where he delivered his speech about the Iron Curtain. From Stettin on the Baltic to Trieste on the Adriatic, an Iron Curtain has descended. But now we've got this lovely bust of Shakespeare here. But it's more of a memorial not to him, but to his mates John Hemming and Henry Condell. Henry Condell, do you ever watch Upstart Crow? He's a real thespian, always speaking like this. Anyway, they were his mates, and they decided to put his folio together, because he didn't actually publish his works all together, the complete works of Shakespeare. So they came along and did it without ambition either of self-profit or fame, only to keep the memory of so worthy a friend and fellow alive. Gives you some idea just how many churches there were in London. I mean, right here is St Mary Aldermanbury, that's where we were. There was the Chapel of Spittle, Elsing Spittle. Then right over here we're coming up to another. I would say there seems to be a church every 50 yards or so. Incredible amount of churches they had.
Instead now Starbucks, you get an incredible amount of stuff. Or Pretz.
Yeah.
Lots of Pretz.
Yeah. Yeah, so for example, this one right next to that church is the Church of St Alban, Wood Street. Originally, I think it dates from the 8th century, but then of course it burnt down and all sorts of... But then it was bombed by the Luftwaffe. And it's another one that they've turned into a private residence. People live in there. Yeah, amazing.
Is there a cure for you before I die? So you open.
Continuing up Wood Street and past this building here, underneath which lies the buried head of King James IV of Scotland. This was St Michael's Church. Have you found a head whilst digging?
We haven't found it yet.
You haven't found a head?
No.
In 1500s it was down there.
It's been there for 500 years. Yeah.
I can get someone.
Did you know that there's a head buried underneath there?
King James IV of Scotland, his head is buried underneath this building. So, well, the Battle of Flodden Field was in 1513, and it was one of the bloodiest battles in history between the English and the Scots. And poor old King James IV of Scotland was slain in battle. According to John Stowe, the historian, after the battle, the body of the said king being found was enclosed in lead and conveyed to the monastery of Sheen in Surrey. And the workmen there, for their foolish pleasure, hewed off his head, and Lancelot Young, the Master Glazier to Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth I, seeing the dried head with the hair of the head and the red beard, brought it to London to his house in Wood Street, where for a time he kept it. But in the end, caused the sexton of that church to bury it amongst the other bones. When it burnt down and it got bombed and everything, they just left him under there. What amazes me is they actually had a pub there, and it was called the Red Herring, which led me to believe this might not be a true story, but it is a true story. And I thought, why on earth wouldn't they call that pub the King's Head? Out of all the pubs in the whole of London. Look over here, there used to be yet another church. I mean, this one was virtually next to it. St. Peter's Church, West Cheap. Because there's St. Peter there, and you know it's St. Peter because you've got the cross keys above him, which other viewers of my Weather Vanes video will know are the keys to the Kingdom of Heaven. And after the fire, they built these houses. So these houses, these buildings here, are from that period. In the lease, it says you can't build those houses any higher than that. Someone said, I heard that this plane tree here might be the oldest in London, someone said. Could be from, like, you know, early 1800s, even 1700s. But the whole scenario inspired Wordsworth to write a poem. On the corner of Wood Street, when daylight appears, hangs a thrush that sings loud. It has sung for 3 years. I know. Oh. Can you hear that?
Yes.
That's the Bow Bell.
The Bow Bell.
Yeah. If you're born within the sound of the Bow Bell, it means you're a Cockney. A true Cockney. Yeah, that's the one that used to ring the curfew for London. Curfew, of course, comes from couvre le feu. Put out your fire, so people would have to put out their candles. Anyway, it's noisy here. I think we've more or less finished. I mean, I want to say let's go to the pub, but it's all closed. We'll have to find something. Oh, well, cheers, Simon. This is what it's come to, drinking whiskey on a park bench. Thanks for watching, everyone. Everything's shut. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button. Help me get onto Strictly Come Dancing if I get lots of subscribers. And also follow me on my Instagram, which is @JoolzGuidesOfficial. But do look out for some of the other videos on my channel. There's lots and lots. And if you like the music, you can buy it on littlelostlou.com. See you next time. See you, Simon.
Blow